Divine Decode, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on life's mysteries and decode the wisdom your soul's been whispering all along. I'm your host, Pragya Malvia, and today we are stepping into something mystical yet deeply practical. Because what if the answers you've been chasing aren't out there but have been written inside you all along? Our guest, Kanika Vasudeva, is a radiant empowerment coach and Akashic Records reader who helps leaders break through invisible ceilings and reclaim their soul power. If you have ever felt that strange tug, that thought of there's something bigger for me, but I can't name it, I can't find it, today's episode might just be the key that unlocks it. Thank you, Kanika. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks a lot, Pragya. I'm so glad to be here.
That is such a pleasure. Also, Kanika, let's start at the very core, okay? Akashic Records. For someone who has never heard the term before, what exactly are they? Could you define that for us? And also, are we talking about some mystical library of our past lives, or is it more like an energetic Google Drive of every thought, choice, and possibility that is there? So how do you describe it? Yeah, go on.
I think it's a good question. And yes, it is a mystical library. It is also the energetic library. It basically has everything, all the information, all the thoughts that I would have had all my lifetimes, this lifetime, past lifetime, literally everything. And it contains that information about me, contains that information about everybody else. So this is how it gets really interesting. It's really cool that you got out Google Drive there because if you start tapping into how much Google knows about you, or maybe in today's world, how much Chat GPT knows about us, there's lots that it's picking up, right? It's picking up in terms of our patterns, it's picking up our tonality, it's really picking up our intentions. If you tell it, hey, write like me, Chat GPT will do that. So the gift with that is that when you are able to tune into the Akashic Records library, you were really getting this really high level understanding of yourself, just g- pretty deep and in a way that you wouldn't have even known. Maybe if I break that down by an example, you think of an apple and then you chop that into, let's say, 200 pieces. Now you take out one piece. And that piece is like your lifetime. And we all literally look at that little piece, that tiny paper thin slice, because by the time you've chopped the apple into 200 pieces, it's very, very thin. And that is all that we know about ourselves in our bodies. That's all that we know. That's all that we think we are in terms of our skills, in terms of our knowledge, in terms of how loved we are, how loving we are. Like literally, that becomes a definition. Whereas you as a soul are the whole apple. So when you tune into the Akashic records, you're able to understand that. Maybe if you had a toxic pattern that was going on in your life and you were just looking at your lifetime and you were understanding, hey, okay, I had a toxic relationship there, then I had a toxic relationship again, and then I had it again, but I don't really know what's going on. But if you look at the apple and you start realizing, oh, I had a scar there, I had another one here, then you start understanding why your lifetime is having that impact. So, Akashic Records is the library that contains the impact of everything that's ever happened for you, from, let's say, your past karmas to your ancestral patterns, to whatever's happened in this childhood till the time now. It contains all of that. And the beauty is that then when you understand that whole picture, then you can start clearing and healing it. So you're not just cleaning the lifetime, but you actually start cleaning out the cuts and the bruises from the entire apple. So it heals at a very holistic level. And the impact can be a lot more profound because if you were just healing that little slice, it's still getting impacted by the whole apple, right? But if you heal the whole apple, the chances of getting that apple slice a lot healthier, they're just so much higher.
That is such a clear explanation of it. And also, thank you for clearing it out for us because, when we hear things like this and when people hear this, they actually, just feel that it is such a spiritual buzzword, but it is so, so much more as you described it. And okay, help me out here. How are Akashic records? How are they different from the gut feeling that we get or the intuition that we will talk about? What's the difference?
I love the question because I think this is the biggest myth in the world that, uh, intuition or however else someone else is getting information, um, we feel that somehow that is different from the Akashic records. Everything is coming from the Akashic records because that is the overall library. But then the other myth also people have with that is that they feel, oh, someone can access this just because I'm calling it the Akashic records. It feels like, oh, I can't access it. It is a term or it is a knowledge library that is for certain people. And nothing could be further from the truth. You are the soul who's incarnated into this body right now. You have 100% sovereignty over your body and you have 100% sovereignty over information for you. So, your part of the Akashic record, you can always access it. Whether you are doing that through your intuition, what you call intuition, or whether you are doing that through your gut feeling, you're still, in that sense, channeling your Akashic records and you're still getting information from there. The only thing would be that you need to really clear your channel so that you're getting the right answers. Because that's where sometimes also the other part of the confusion comes in, where we feel we can't really trust it. It's not the source where you're getting the information from. Because if you're tapping into intuition or your gut, whatever you call it, you're still tapping into the Akashic records, you're still picking out information from there. But the channel in between has to be clear enough so that there's no interference, so that your inside, whatever you're getting, it's not getting colored or biased in some sense.
That is totally such a clarity again, and thank you for doing that. Also, let's make this all real, okay? If I'm stuck in a toxic work cycle, or if I am questioning my relationship, whether with friends, whether with a partner, whether with my family, okay? So, does opening these records, does it actually shift anything in my day-to-day life or my day-to-day life thinking? Or is it more about the inner clarity that I'm getting and then working on it?
All of that. It does all of that. So, how you work with the Akashic records, or at least how I look at them, is that I always go into the root cause of the issue. And there might be lots of things with different clients. Sometimes when I open up the records, I will dive into the past lives because that's what's shown to me. Sometimes it could just be ancestral work that I'm doing. Sometimes it could be inner child work. So it actually picks up anything. And I think you were saying that, hey, does it actually shift things for me day to day? Absolutely, it does. I'll give you examples and maybe that will bring that more home. One of the recent ones that I did was I have this client and he had lost his wife. So he was just wanting to move on from that, wanted to understand why his wife and him had connected, wanted to understand how he could still use her help to further the work that they'd actually started, but then she transitioned and how he could still have that connection so that he could continue that work. And Akashic Records can really help you do that because when you are tuning into the spirit or when you're tuning into the Akashic records, that is not just dependent on the body experience. So, he got help there. He got all the insights. He got all the answers there. There's another client. He came in because he was facing some legal issues and he wanted to just have a much more clearer answer without having to go to the whole legal drama. So when I looked at him, and maybe I'll dive into this one in a little bit more detail. When I looked at him, I looked at the past lives that were drawing that experience for him. Why was he getting caught up in legal battles? What was going on there? Once we cleared the past life, then more things emerged with his ancestral lives, lives of his ancestors, and things that had been going on with them, and how that trauma had really carried on backwards from one generation to another generation. So we looked at that, resolved some of the karma there as well, because we can all carry some of the bits from our ancestors. We might just not be aware of it, but there's a lot that we are carrying from them. If they have taken away money from people, or if there have been some false or authoritative ways of dealing, then there is a balance that, as the incarnates of that lineage, that we're still paying off or working off from. So we cleared that. And once we cleared that, the whole legal drama, it actually just fizzled out for him. But also, I could see that only in the visions. So I don't have proof of this one. Is that when you hold that space, you start seeing all your ancestors also come up one by one, and they really start healing them as well. Like multiple times when I've healed moms who've had a miscarriage or abortion, I'll see that there'll be just a lot of women, sometimes even up to 7 generations, who'll come up and they come up with this wound as well, that they're still carrying in this space. A fragment of them is still carrying that, and the whole lineage heals itself from that. How does it transpire in the outer life, so, or in the physical life, so to speak? When I looked at the legal client who was having legal issues, for him the legal issues got resolved. When I worked with clients who are facing sometimes very difficult co-parenting issues, then that seems to resolve, because that is the energy that I'm working with in the Akashic Records reading and healing. And then that is what transpires outside. If there's a toxic workplace issue, or someone wants to connect with their past ones, then all of that can happen through the Akashic Records, and you form those connections and you move forward with a lot more answers. And having resolved those root issues that caused those patterns in the first place, if you were having toxic workplaces just because of some pattern that, or karmic pattern that you're still trying to resolve now, the Akashic record in reading, it just clears that up. If I could explain it, it's a little bit like, initially when you come into the reading, when you don't have the answer, it's like you are in a room. That room has a certain size, and you're inside that. And you feel that that's the size of the room. That's literally all the space that you can take. By the time the Akashic Records reading and healing is completed, the healing bit is where I really focus on more, because that's why everybody comes in. You don't want to just know what's going on. That is great to know what's going on, but you also really want to heal the pattern. You want to heal the karma. You want to heal the ancestral patterns. You want to heal your inner childhood trauma. You want to bring in those new beliefs there. So by the time that's finished, it's like the older, tighter room vanished. And then you are in a much bigger room with a lot more space on all the sides. So the height, the width, everything is a lot more. And you have a lot more room to do what you really wanted to do.
That is so powerful, and I love I love the answer. I love how you again explained it and all those examples that you've given. I truly believe and I agree to what you've said. That is so, so powerful. Also, let's be honest, we are all chasing the dream. Like, we all want career, good money, and wonderful liberty and freedom. But so many people, they still feel this quiet ache inside, okay? And you work with a lot of leaders and high performers, the kind of people who look successful on Instagram and Google, but inside they are also exhausted and burnt out, or they also just feel empty. So, what are some common energy blocks that you see in these people? And would you like to share? Why do you think that they have those blocks, and how can they be resolved?
Yeah, great question. Well, the first thing is that when we are chasing, when we are actually trying to overwork, yes, on the outside, it seems like it's the boss who's demanding a lot. It seems like, well, this is the culture of the company. It might seem like this is what I have to do to stay safe, to be in my job. And also, it is just pretty normal. This is how society is made. That is the fabric, or that is the programming in the society. But the truth underneath that is also that somewhere we feel the need to prove ourselves. You have to prove so that you earn the love, so that you earn the money. We've got a very deeply ingrained belief, most of us, that I need to work hard. I need to prove that to myself. A lot of times when we have been growing up, we have heard things such that you do this and then you are good. And if you don't do this, then you are not good. So we're constantly trying to prove ourselves. In an energetic sense, what's really happening is that we are getting disconnected from our own self worth, and we are placing that importance on the world outside, whether that is our boss, whether that is our partner, whether that is just the people around us, maybe our parents, maybe our friends. But we are giving that power to someone else to say, hey, how good am I? And they decide. Now, I'll bring a little story, funny story here, and maybe you've heard of this or a version of this. This is how this fable goes. There's a guy who had a donkey long time ago, and the donkey wasn't really doing well. So he wants to take the donkey to a vet and get the donkey treated. So he is walking along with the donkey, and then some people start laughing at him. They're like, come on, look at this idiot, because he is walking with the donkey. Does he not know that he can sit on the donkey? So the guy sits on the donkey. Then he goes a little further, and then the other people who look at him and they go like, come on, look at this guy. Like, will he not just give the donkey a break? And can he just not get off the donkey and look after the donkey a little bit better? So he did that. The story is a little bit funny. It goes on with various permutations and combinations, like the guy tries to carry the donkey over his shoulders. But no matter what he does, there were always somebody who would be able to just point out some mistakes in him. So, point I'm trying to make is that we all try to live with this idea that my worth is not inside me, it's outside me. But when we do that, we're not only giving our power away, but it's also a futile exercise, because you could dance, you could bend backwards, you could just do whatever you wanted to do. Your worth is inside you. Somebody else outside you can still find the lack. So, how does that apply to our situation today? You're looking at me and you're going, well, but, I need a salary. And how can I just go like, okay, I'm worthy and things are going to work out, right? um, and I'll come back to this, that because we place the worth outside, we are actually then also disconnecting ourselves from the very flow that makes us, the universal flow that makes us. We disconnect from that. We disconnect from this idea that, hey, I'm part of something bigger. We separate, we just think of ourselves in the body, we just remember ourselves in that little lifetime. We forget the whole picture, we forget the soul. But why I'm bringing you back there is that we are mere mortal, very small, tiny human beings. If you look at the whole cosmos and the divine energy that all of us come from, we're all wired from the same energy. We're all made of the same energy. And if that divine energy is flowing in you, me, then we are all divine as such. It is when we disconnect that we start feeling that we are unworthy. And when we start feeling that we are unworthy, we bring into existence unworthy situations around us. When we feel totally within our bodies, we feel like we are worthy, we are loved, then that is how it oscillates. Like that is the law, that is how the universe works. Our body has about 7 octillion electrons. That is 7 into 10 times the power of 27. I'll explain that number in a minute, but that's a huge number. And I'll also talk about why am I really bringing electrons into picture. So electrons are really supposed to be traveling in waves, as in if they were going somewhere, if they're just traveling as waves, they will not make an impact. So scientists wanted to just study electrons. They wanted to look at the path, and they're doing this experiment, and they found a very curious result. They found that when they were looking at electrons, the mere thing that they were looking at an electron, just that looking, just that little focus made that wave a particle. So from an idea, from a possibility, it becomes a real thing. It becomes a particle where it strikes against the slit and it makes an impact there. Our bodies have 7 octillion electrons, roughly, depending on the age, weight, etc. But that's a huge number. That is 1,000,000 times more than all the grains of sand across all the beaches in the world. Every single one of us has so many electrons. Every single one of us has so many possibilities inside us that if we focused, every possibility there becomes a particle. So literally that whole concept that thoughts become reality, with our vibration, we create that reality around us. So if I believed fully and thoroughly that I am worthy and I'm loved, that is what I'll create around me. And if I don't, or if I'm outside alignment, if I'm looking to everybody else, then well, they're just waves. I am at mercy of everyone else around me.
That is again so powerful. And yeah, I truly believe in the things that you said, the outer world. If we give the power to the outer world, it will anyways make us feel smaller. And it's all about self-trust. And thank you for doing this, Kanika. Also to our listeners, if today's conversation it lit a spark in you, don't brush it off. Please listen to it. That spark is your soul saying, remember me? Kanika reminded us of something profound. Alignment is not something that you chase, it's something that you return to. So pause today, listen, and revisit the whispers that you've been ignoring, and notice that you're not here to decode someone else's truth, but only yours. Okay, and until next time, stay curious, stay expansive, and keep decoding the divine within you, one layer at a time. I'm your host, Pragya Malvia, and this was Divine Decode. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Kanika. Thank you for being here. It was so, so wonderful.
Thanks a lot, Pragya, and I welcome all the listeners to reach out to me as well. I can be found at Kanika Energy Coach, or you can reach out to me at my website. It is artoflifecenter.com. I would love to hear from you, and take care. Keep smiling.